Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. I'm Bill Carell, and I'm here with Jan Jeremias, my partner in World Empowerment. Yep, just the two of us. We're going to empower the world. How's that sound? We get together every single week, and I think I tell you that right now because when we're having our conversations, they're not bound really by any prior agreement that what we will say or not say. What you're listening to or participating in is just two people talking to each other, just a conversation. And I, for one, think that this is how we heal the world. I think the access to people getting to know each other better is to speak and listen and think about it. And then maybe if you have something else to say, speak and listen and think about it. Not a bad formula for getting to know someone. So here we are. It's Monday. Just past the Ides of May. And those of you who are not Shakespeare readers, that means the 15th. And those of you who are, that means Julius Caesar. So this weekend was pretty spectacular for me, actually. What I mean by that is my dear wife had 3 days in a row when her shift ended early because there just wasn't an awful lot of mail for her to deliver. So she got it done early and came home, and she could hang out and be with me for a while. So we started our festivities on Saturday afternoon together. And went and got a nice drive under our belt, and went out and stopped for a dinner, and then came back home. But then Sunday was another thing entirely. It was her day off. She works 6 and she has 1 day off. But I got to be here with her, and there's one of the things that I describe is like how I know I have really made it is I get to watch her walking around doing the things she loves to do, which really doesn't amount to much of anything as far as anyone is concerned, including her, except for the complete freedom to do whatever she wants. So I can take a deep breath with that and really feel like, things are good. And of course, we got to ride around in the convertible, 3 days in a row, which is pretty nice. And 2 days prior to that, it rained, so we didn't do that. But I'm telling you all of this to tell you that I've had kind of an interesting string of posts and interactions on Facebook over the last 24 hours. I saw something that I really normally would just go right by and not make any comment on or anything. And I didn't. But I did engage ChatGPT, and I made up what I thought were some pretty cool looking memes. And the memes are always intended to evoke some kind of positive, conversational engagement, as opposed to making somebody bad and wrong and then taking a position and then having to fight with somebody. I'm not interested in that at all. Well, out of all of this, I get a phone call out of the blue from a dear friend of yours and mine, by the way, and I'm going to keep his name silent, but he used to be one of our partners on this podcast. Some of you will know who that is. The rest of you, he wants to talk privately, which is perfectly fine with me. I wanted to engage human beings that can think, and what I mean by that, have critical thinking modules where they can question the things, that they see in their life that they accept. If it's brought to their attention that there might be more information available, they'll accept it and they'll thank you for it. It may not change his or anybody's mind, but at least they're willing to engage it and debate it and then ask more questions to completely understand before dismissing it out of hand. Does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
So why do I want to talk to people about those kinds of things? Well, I came up being a small business owner, being a volunteer in the community. I mean, really kind of putting energy and time into making at least this community or anything else that I saw that was worthwhile to apply my talents to make it better. And in most cases, it wasn't anyway related to enriching myself or making more money. In most cases, it meant I was just giving my time. And what typically would happen is that because of my style of doing things, where I take something on that I may not fully understand, but once I've decided to commit to it, I don't quit. And that's not a usual trade out in the world in the last 30 years. There are a lot of people who will try something for a little while and then come away with a good story. So my best effort at always trying to take a difficult job and making it come to pass and to completing some kind of an assignment or some goal is to engage everyone, especially the people who disagree with me. Now, that doesn't seem like the easy way to go, but I found out a long time ago, if I want to take on a challenging project, the best person to take to lunch is the person who thinks you're plumb crazy and you can't possibly do it. They will give you all the steps and the things that you need to overcome on your journey to making it happen. And they'll do it gleefully, okay? And they won't do it because they think they're helping you, which is perfectly fine as well, until later on when they start seeing the things that they suggested to you being worked on and accomplished. Then a lot of times they come back around and they say, hey, how can I help out here? Now, that doesn't happen in a week or two, but I'm talking about generally over a long period of time. So why do I want to talk about the world and people, how they're getting along with each other? The biggest thing that was on my mind this weekend was this propensity to call human beings that you don't even know the worst possible names that you can think of. Not because you know anything about them, but just because that's how you treat people, right? Isn't that the times we're living in? You treat people badly that you don't know, that you're saying there's a group of people out there that don't agree with you. And since they don't agree with you, they are the worst possible human beings on the planet. Jan, in your world, you may not hear this very much, but in our world, the rest of us human beings that get out and about, it's kind of like what we hear, on mainstream TV. And it's one of the main reasons that you and I don't watch mainstream TV or watch the news or really watch anything that has to do with current events, unless it's something that holds interest to us and we think there might be something that affects us or something we can do to help. So there's all of that. And there are a lot of folks who I think are not engaged in that type of languaging or conversation. And I think what I'm finding out is they're more or less just keeping their head down, not going to engage in it, not real interested in adding any fuel to the fire, not going to argue for one side or the other, and going to be very protective of their position that they're not being public about. And that's kind of a survival mechanism, I'm saying. And it's perfect.
Well, I would have to say they probably do one more thing. or the
Yep.
people that I know that don't engage, they're very aware of how they show up in the world, meaning that they're not going to go out and, yeah, maybe they don't engage in that way, but they're going to engage in other ways.
Right.
I don't meet many people who are like, who are what you, let's say, protective,
Right.
go out in the world and cause harm. And what I mean by that is they're not going to verbally abuse someone online. They're
Right.
not going to be nasty. They're not going to be unappreciative. They're making a stance and a presence with who they are, but they're not outwardly engaging in the noise out there at the moment. And that's the way I feel it is. I feel it's noise. It's noise that's trying to distract me from what's important in life. That's the way I feel. I feel like they're trying to create so much noise and confusion that um amongst people for whatever person, whether it be control or however they feel like they can better control people, if they're more one, if they're so I want to say done or frustrated by all the noise and dialogue, or they sit there, whatever their reasoning. But I don't meet many people who kind of say, I'm not going to engage and I'm going to selectively choose the people I engage with. That's the other thing, is I
Yeah.
think they're very aware of the people that they do interact with.
I want to just say that I completely agree with you that those folks don't even give it a thought that they're not engaging. It's just not what they would do, you know?
I mean, even on a good day, if people actually had conversations or whatever, it's
Right.
kind of like I have a friend who always says to me, who said to me a number of times that religion is nobody's business. It's your own business. It's not up for it's your belief, it's your whatever, it's personal.
Right.
And I think there are just certain things which are yours. And yes, if you want to have a nice conversation about them, like I did this morning with a colleague friend in Illinois, then that's great. But that it's not necessary for them, like to be able to like they're very aware of their own values and that they're basically in the world to make it a better place.
I,
And and that's what they're aware of. And it's not in trying to. And now if injustices are coming into play, then that complicate you know what I mean? Then it further brings light to whatever that is. Like, when the world is not balanced.
yeah, I think most of the people that I enjoy engaging with are interested in either giving or getting more information, more than anything. What have you heard about this? How reliable is it? What's the concern? What does it mean if it's true? But it's critical thinking. It's not just gossiping. Okay,
Mhm.
and I think that's a big distinction from a group of people who are consumers and constantly consuming this information, making it very, very valuable for advertisers. And people say outrageous things, not because either A, they'll stand behind them and they believe they're true, but they want to be newsmakers. They want to be people who get clicks and hits and are, on the inside of generating a lot of ad revenue, whether it be on Facebook or, um, YouTube or something like that. So I think, the other aspect of it is I always ask questions. I don't make statements. I ask people, and it's amazing to me how they never answer my question. I mean, to a person, you'll get whatever they got to give, but in most cases, it's got nothing to do with the question I asked.
Well,
And
either that or they maybe hear the question differently than you're asking, or you're looking for a different, like if you're looking for a particular seed from that question and what they hear is different than what you're actually, you know, and so maybe the question, so if you ask a question is like, okay, is this what you're asking me?
I will
Because
grant you that that could be possible, but let's just say I ask a question about whether or not the United States is graduating children that can read and do math at grade level. Imagine the answers that could come back that have nothing to do with the education system, but kind of give you an idea of what's on their mind with what's really wrong with the world and why God doesn't love us anymore, that kind of, weird and extreme thinking. So I will grant you that in every question, I think I always call the question a Rorschach test, that everybody can see something different in it. And what's probably most important and on your mind today are the things you're going to be mostly talking to people about. I mean, for instance, you're not thinking about it, it's not coming up in conversation. If you are thinking about it, it's going to kind of have this, effect of being like a magnet that draws little iron filings around on the top of a desk, though the iron filings have nothing to do with the magnet whatsoever. So public discourse on social media is so much different, in my opinion, from people in the town square. I mean, if you met up with somebody at Starbucks and you engaged in a conversation with them, they're willing to say things that are, I would say, pretty outrageous, insensitive, untrue. They will say a lot of things in the printed word that it doesn't communicate clearly at all, and there's lots of room to misinterpret what's being discussed.
I just want to, because it didn't say, I'm confused a little bit with what you were saying. I just want to clarify as I'm
Sure.
sitting here, is to me, from what I'm not quite sure if this was what you were saying. To me, what I experience is people are willing to post in social media something that they would never say to someone's face.
I think that's a great way of saying it. Yes.
That all of a sudden there's no human being on the other end. And so there's this like automatic shut off switch in people. I feel like in people's brains that says this isn't really affecting anybody. It sort of goes out there in virtual world, and it's not hurtful. Anybody who it does affect, it isn't important. There's like this whole element of being opposite someone and having to look in someone's eyes and see the impact of what you're saying versus what you're writing on a post or a comment on a post, whether you be the person who posted or a comment on the post. And I think that there is no filter either. Years ago, I would chime in in a closed group on pets, and with a very differing opinion than the norm. So I was there saying it from my expert kind of like background. This is what I had found. And when I tell you, people were so hostile and basically like would wish me like, would tell me I was killing animals. Like they were horrible. And and everything. And then finally, I just gave up after I'd gotten attacked. Like, I don't know how many times. I thought to myself, I'll just, I'll speak to people who actually appreciate what I have to share or might be more open, and then a number of years went by and I thought to myself, and it was actually during COVID. So this was like, let's say 10, 15 years ago or whatever. During COVID, all of a sudden, since I was online more, I thought, well, let me just see if anything has changed, kind of thing. 5, 6 years later, I got on, same thing. And I mean, I literally posted a comment 5 seconds later. I was like, do people just sit there waiting to respond? Because it was so quickly. And then all of a sudden, right away, and I thought, not a whole lot has changed. And I just decided that it wasn't worth, like, on that platform, like, on those, in those areas, it wasn't worth me, like, you know, but people would be really, really nasty. And I would think to myself, like, there's a way to say something, and this is definitely not it.
You're so funny. You
Uh,
hit the nail on the head. Part of what was that set me off was a guy that was posting about, some issue that he had with libtard, progressive extremists, And I said, do you realize that there are none of those? That doesn't exist out there anywhere. That name that you just came up with does not describe anybody who's going to be reading your stuff and say, oh, that's me. What you might want to like work on something that, that gets your point across that they're not right thinking, but don't just be the worst pejorative that you can come out with and then label. You're not going to get anybody's attention if your goal was to make a difference. It's not going to happen. Okay, so that was part of what got me started. And so one of my posts was, out of all of my friends, and there's like 9,000 of you out there, would all of my my ultra extremist MAGA, what is the word, white supremacists, please check in with me. So I put it up there and they're going like, what the hell are you doing, Bill? This isn't you, And I said, okay. So I put up another post and said, now let's try it from the other end. Okay. All right. All of you progressive, liberal, commie socialist types, would you please check in with me now too? Who are you? And so the point of it is that when you're using that kind of language, it doesn't represent anything that's worth engaging in a conversation. And at best, it's a call to arms, like defend yourself. So in the world where we are right now, having conversation with people and understanding their differences, why is it that certain people will hear anything and have confirmation bias about certain subjects that they will immediately believe the worst of everything they hear?
Well,
These
first
are
of all, I don't think I just want to say one point, and that is, first of all, if someone feels like they're being attacked, right away, there's no room for dialogue.
amen.
Because your immediate reaction, going back to, to primitive times, is protection.
Yep.
And so there's no room for anything, or because you're in that flight, fight, freeze, fawn mode, and you can't, like, all the F's, and there's no room, no space for anything at that point.
Ooh.
And so no matter what, if you start out a conversation, a discussion, a meeting, and that is the energy of, I've got to defend myself, or I've got to defend whatever it is. And it could be my stance. It could be my physical. I've got to defend. I mean, whatever it is, if
Right.
I'm on the defensive, forget it. Then there's no space for anything at all.
Yep. You and I are on the same exact page here. So, which is why I spent an afternoon of my time just posting general things, so that it was really quite interesting, because there have been things that I posted about an event or world events in the past, like a year ago or whatever, and people ate it up like raw meat, and they really tore into each other. They used F-bombs and all the rest of that, and I'd have to take it down. But I kind of conditioned the listening by saying, I'm conflicted because I have some things that I'd like to discuss about how the world is operating right now, and I'm not sure this is the time or the place for it. Well, right off the bat, there were 40 or 50 people all saying, yeah, express your opinion. This is a free country, this, that, and the other thing. And so I took them up on it. Do you know that everybody except for one person and probably 40 people or so engaged in comments in a half a dozen posts that I put up, all civil. Every last one of them, you know, refraining from cutting to the chase and calling the other person a name. And in one case, I had to tell this twosome, they were just bickering with each other, did to, back and forth and with their comments. And I said, look, if you guys are just into arguing, please take that someplace else. That's not what I'm trying to do here. And they stopped. So maybe they took it someplace else. You never know. But there's an aspect to showing up publicly as an authority figure, if you will, by saying something that's outlandish or extreme or kind of parrots talking points that you've heard from other places, but not have to defend them, and just immediately shut down communication and dehumanize the other people that are asking questions about it. Not even disagreeing, but just asking questions. And what I'm interested in is, all right, so how did you get to the point where this makes sense to you? Show me, draw me a picture, show me the map. How do I get from where I am to understand where you are? And that's not a common conversation that most people are used to. And most of them get weird about it, actually.
Well, I know why I think they get weird is because if they sat there and they reflected, they might not even know.
Amen.
They might not, and sometimes it is not explainable. Sometimes it's just this innate feeling like, I'll get it, where I'll just feel like something about this just isn't right. Like something about this is wrong, feels wrong to me.
Right.
And that isn't beyond words. That's more on a sensory level,
Yes.
which can't be, but even admitting that is movement because someone might say to you, I don't know exactly why I feel like that or why I have that opinion. But, however they want to identify it, but it just feels true to me. Like that feels true to me or that feels fair, whatever it is. But I think that a lot of times when you ask those questions, people haven't reflected long and hard enough on their own beliefs and on their own sort of opinions. And they haven't actually owned them. They haven't sat there and like we were saying, they haven't oh, okay, this is what I believe, but what does that really mean for me and my family or me and the people that I, or my community? Like they haven't really examined what that is. And so I think they have a hard time answering the question or asking questions because you're asking them to reflect on something which probably they don't even want to reflect on.
I like what you're saying. And, people get in the habit of being in the send mode, where they're just pumping stuff out. And in many cases, all they're trying to do is get some kind of a reaction. And when they get the reaction, they're not quite sure what to do with it. But there's also, as you're saying, the folks that just adopt things as true. And once they have, they take what's a feeling and they mislabel it as a fact. And it goes into their...
That happens too. And I'm not saying it's a fact, but I'm saying that what ends up happening is that I don't even know that they've identified what it is. Like, I don't even know that they've examined it far enough to say, I don't really, but whatever about this makes me feel like this isn't right for me. I don't even know if they've done that. I think they listen and they adopt or they're around or they're in a community of others and they want to feel like they belong. So I don't know how much thinking there is involved and feeling. I think it almost feels like, oh, okay, well, everybody else in my family feels like this. So I'm just going to feel like this too.
Yeah.
Or, I belong to this group and I think it's key. I think it's linked a lot. And might be because I'm working on a book right now about belonging. But I think, no one likes to feel like the outsider and that that their opinion is different than the rest. I mean, very few people. I mean, I think that there's something to that. And I think that I've lived in a space where I've been the outsider for quite a lot of my life, but that's different. But still, I don't know. I think that people get very wrapped and they feel vulnerable and scared to actually, voice their own opinion and to say, and that's a huge, and because then you have to belong to yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm finding myself pretty much feeling like uh, I'm in agreement with you, and also kind of wondering if there isn't some kind of an aspect where people just hear something and they may not even fully understand it, but someone got a good reaction when they said it, so they kind of insert it into the conversation somewhere so they can sound worldly or knowledgeable or something, and kind of like that was my turn to say something. Now they're onto somebody else, and when somebody actually says, "Really, talk to me about that. Give me what you got. What's going on with that?" It's like, what? Oh, you're listening to me? Yeah.
Right. But that's, I think that some of it is, goes back to really good, really refined listening skills
Yep.
and realizing, what I just said, is it contributing in any way to the energy, to the conversation?
Right.
Or is it just, you know, words that are filling in um space?
Yeah. You know, if I post something, I'm going to get the usual suspects plus. And having a lot of connections on Facebook and posting the things that I do, I have a kind of a profile of, between food and love and friendship. And, there's certain things that people expect from me. Plus whatever comments that I bring to their posts and pages. So when I do something that sounds just a little bit different than what they're used to, it's kind of neat. They ask if I'm all right, or they ask what's on my mind, or something of that nature. These are people who think they have some knowledge of who I am and who I intend to be in the world. I'm not sure how many other people put thought into it and have the folks that are around them contribute to being good at who they are. You know what I mean? Let me say it differently. I think I heard somebody say once, your friends are people who you share complaints with. They have the same complaints that you do. So you're friends until you lose those complaints, and then they're not your friends anymore. You got to go find new friends with different complaints. And most of the people that I interact with are not complainers. They're people like me that are kind of expressing our love for our families and, what we're hoping for, in terms of what's going on in sports, or what are UConn Huskies doing, or the Celtics, or whatever. There's all that aspect to it. Almost nobody tells me, that they hate their life, and or the woman they've been married to for 36 years is cheating on them, and what should I do, Bill? I'm not getting those kind of inquiries for some reason or another. Most of them are about sharing what's going on with their kids, pictures of their grandchildren, and that's kind of the social media that I'm interested in. I'm not on. I mean, you've seen me in person, and you've seen me all of the years here, talking about life and talking about empowerment. How could I possibly be a complainer? That just would be so inauthentic. I would have to make something up. I got to tell you, one of my friends posted earlier today, and she said, the meme said, today you wake up and all the things you were thankful for yesterday is what you get to keep. And I said, that is so strange for you to put that meme up. My wife and I had an extensive conversation yesterday about how thankful I am for everything in my life, the things that work, the things that don't work, that I have this feeling right now that's similar to when the two of us were fat, dumb, and happy in our 20s. We both made damn good money. We had no debt. We had two cars. We had the world by the, by the wings, if you will. And I said, I can't picture myself making up something that would make me happier right now. So this meme was just like coming from God back to me. And I said, I wished for exactly what I had yesterday, all of it. And I'm perfectly happy to have that today. Now, I haven't heard what she said about that, but my point is, life is just this funny little series of echoes where you say things out into the universe and then echoes come back to you now and in the future and remind you of who you are and why you're here. And I had this other, go ahead.
And I spent, and I spent the weekend, in a different type of like reflection in some ways. Just looking at me, I think I look at my experiences and how my reaction to them or what I'm going through or the day or whatever as and I do have appreciation in that realm, but if I'm not in that space and I'm feeling something else as what, to really actually start to examine why to like not in the fact that I'm trying to obsess it and figure out okay, well, so and so, but just in that feeling of what in me feels like what is not complete at the moment. What is it trying to tell me about my life that I could do better, or I could look for something different, or I could, whatever it is, you get obsessed by the fact that and maybe that's and just, I guess it's a sort of reframing the experience for what it, so it's just a reframing of okay, well, one is if you can use gratitude in times when you're, when things aren't great, then that's always a useful tool. But, to actually look and say, okay, well, this is what's coming up right now. What's this really about? Why am I feeling like this? It's a glorious day outside. The weather's beautiful or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just kind of looking at it like that. So either one or both are good. But just as this idea of okay, well, if I want my life to be different in some way, what needs to happen?
Yeah, I'm more or less just letting that kind of settle in. I think if somebody were asking me, how can you possibly sit there and just say that you love everything about your life? And I think it's been trained into me over a long time, over years, that mindfulness is not, being a better thinker in terms of what's missing. Mindfulness is taking good inventory about what's present and what's missing together.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's really what I'm referring to, that whole
Exactly.
experience. And I just read a wonderful article, an interview with John Kabat-Zinn. And for, maybe in the show notes, I can post the link because I thought it was on mindfulness. And basically about mindfulness is about, and I think because I was a long time meditator. And so I meditated for many years on and off for different, and he said, it's not trying to get beyond anything. like in meditation, it's like, oh, okay, I gotta stuff my thoughts so I can get like I won't get whatever. It's being with whatever comes in, and that is mindfulness. And mindfulness meditation is it's okay. I'm present for it all. I'm aware of it all. Whatever the experience, I'm aware of the bodily experiences. I'm aware of the emotions that are there. I'm aware of my body. I'm aware of the space I'm in. Maybe, not all at the same time necessarily, but I'm aware. And I'm aware of the thoughts that are going through my mind. And to be truly present for all of that. And I think that to me, the gift is being able to navigate that in everyday life. To be able to think about all those, like to have all those things enter when you're having an experience, a life experience, like a day like yesterday. Like, okay, there are moments that you feel sad, and there are moments that you feel elated, and there are moments you feel joyful, and there are moments you feel gratitude, and there's moments when this hurt, and there are moments when that doesn't hurt, and and it's just all there.
Yeah.
It's life.
Yeah, I've kind of taken and made into a game, and so much of life shows up like you're in boiling, in either a chicken stew or really sometimes it's a wonderful Italian, what they call gravy, a nice red sauce with all of the ingredients that are in it. And mindfulness is to be able to sharpen your awareness and go beyond, that it's chicken stew or it's spaghetti sauce, or no, there's the essence of, a bay leaf. There's the essence of oregano. There's the essence of parsley, where you're starting to experience those things, not like a list of things that should be there, but starting to identify and know them as what they are that are there. And I'm going to say it in different words, but it's in a situation where you take the mundane, normal, and usual and allow for what's always been there to present itself to you newly and see it for the first time, although it's always been there. And in many cases, if you look around the room and take an extra minute to look in detail, into the dark places or into the piles of papers or whatever you have in the space around you, maybe you notice something really nice, like the angle that the tuning keys on the guitar are, that two of them are lined up with each other, but another one isn't lined up with the other two. And that's what makes it marvelous, because they have to be that way in order for the strings to sound the way they're supposed to sound. But I've never really noticed that has to happen, or, that I can actually see a reflection of something that's across the room in the top of my table, or, it's just like not using it as an exercise to awe yourself, but to start to refine your ability to process the information of the world around you. And it becomes really, really useful to you if you've done it when there was no use to it at all. It's like if you get into a situation of stress, it's more or less a situation that you find yourself in that you're unprepared for and you're not sure what's coming. But if you go into a stressful situation, then you can address that stressful situation by looking for what's common that you expect to be there, that you always have known that's there, and also be mindful of what's important that's there that you're concerned about, but you never lose your cool. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. Do you mind if I share something? I read something?
Absolutely. That's why I'm here. That's why I get out of bed in the morning, is to come hear you share something.
So this is that article from the interview with John Kabat-Zinn. He's talking about mindfulness. And he says, basically, mindfulness is not a particular state that if you were really good at meditating, you'd be there, and then you could get back to it whenever you wanted. And that's your home base that never deviates. If you try to approach it that way, you'll always be striving to get to some special state that you're imagining is what mindfulness is all about, and actually missing how special the condition of this present moment is, no matter what. One example being, if you're listening to this, and he's referring to this because they recorded it, but could be that you're listening to us talk. If you're
Yeah.
listening to this with your ears, the miracle of hearing, that's not trivial. And how we actually decode vibrations that come into the ears and set the tympanic membrane, the eardrum going, and then ultimately getting resolved in the auditory cortex. What we're talking about is a miracle here, and that's just hearing. So then they're seeing, feeling, tasting, touching, and all of the different domains in which human intelligence arises, including thoughts and emotions. And what we're doing is we're embracing it all in awareness so that we can actually navigate moments with as much clarity, equanimity, and balance as possible, and not merely to be balanced for ourselves, but for the sake of being in deep connection with what's actually happening.
It sounds like what I said in different words.
Yes, it does. And so as you were saying it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you read this article, Bill, because it was like and so I just had to share because I had just read that last week, that article.
Yes.
And I was saying that for someone who always thought to like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get quiet or meditate or practice, and I'm going to get to some state beyond my normal life where everything is quote unquote peaceful and perfect was kind of like my goal. And then one is realizing that was the moments that I felt that were few and far between. And that if I looked at it like that, it was always going to be something slightly beyond my grasp. And also something that I was always trying to achieve and get to, as opposed to being where I was.
Yeah.
And so no matter what you're going through, it's being present. It's being aware of, and seeing yourself like, okay, I'm aware I'm distracting myself at this moment. I'm aware of the fact that I'm binge watching this and why, might not be the best choice, but I'm aware of it, and I'm not doing it in some sort of unconscious way with little awareness.
Well, the neat part of it is that part of mindfulness is listening to yourself. Listen for mindfulness.
That's right.
Now,
Exactly.
what is your response, and what is your thrownness in terms of how you're responding, and then how are you responding to that, and all of it. Not necessarily to even try to understand anything or make it good or bad, but just to notice. Just to notice. And I think in the noticing of that, that's when things start to calm down. And then the thoughts aren't the thing that are driving your mindfulness. Now you can actually listen. And if you want a fun exercise, this is something that I've kind of had a ball doing myself. You close your eyes and you close your mouth and you breathe softly and just allow your tinnitus to just run the way that it runs. People have a lot of different ways of describing what it sounds like to them, but a lot of people describe it like when a high tension wire is humming, you on a hot summer day and you just notice a high tension wire, electrical wire, the one on the top, it's buzzing, So to them, it sounds kind of like that. But if you listen carefully, it's not one note. It's a lot of notes. It's a lot of notes overlapping with each other. Humming and starting and finishing and all that. So you can do that in a room by yourself. You can do it out in the air in your backyard, just breathing and the sense and feeling the sun on your face, noticing that you're sweating, noticing that your lips taste salty, all of that at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot more fun than going on social media, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more real, by the way.
I mean, I think sometimes That's part of and there are different ways, you could practice mindfulness. I mean, you know, just on a normal, in moments, in everyday moments. Um, you know, I think the first book I read about mindfulness was The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. And there's just so many opportunities if we really want to experience. I mean, it could be standing in the shower and feeling the water as it comes down you and noticing what the lather feels like when you wash your hair or when you soap up, when you put you get all lathered up and noticing the warmth and the temperature and, all that different kind of stuff. Or, if you go through let's say my morning routine, it's that first cup of tea, the warmth in your hands, noticing the fragrance of the tea that I drink Earl Grey in the morning. So, that noticing that smell of Earl Grey and the fact that, or it could be, getting outside for that first, morning walk or morning breath of fresh air. And it's noticing the temperature, what you see, all those different, let alone just, you don't have to go anywhere. But if you were to just incorporate just those things into your life.
You want a tip?
Yeah.
A behavior that you could learn from and watch actively and learn to model is bird watching.
Oh, I bird watching is amazing.
This is where if you want to get an affinity for mindfulness, the intentionality, the focus, that bird watchers bring, they're scouting and they're scouting and they're scouting. And then they see a, yellow breasted, whatever it is. And then they all, come together on that one image. And some of them see it through a leaf and some of them see it, in full sun, and some see the backside of it. But the whole point is they are trying to drink in that image with all of their senses at the same time. And if you could learn to be a bird watcher for your own, proximity, like what is occurring around you with, I say 6 senses, because I do think that the mental cerebral aspect of mindfulness is very, very big, because that gives you the screen that you're playing all of your noticing on, as well as being susceptible to energy and those things that come to you that are not, see, feel, touch, smell, taste. Then there's some things that just are. When you let those in, that can be an amazing day.
But I thank you for bringing in, because I think the other thing that you learn is that just like bird watching, like even yourself, if you go out and you start to become aware of like that you can train yourself,
Yes.
that is something that you go out originally and you don't see anything. And then all of a sudden you start to you start to look for it more. And all of a sudden you start to notice more. So you could say you get better at it, but you're training yourself to look for it and to see it and to slow down enough. I think that that's part of what also mindfulness slows us down a little bit. We're all used to moving so fast and getting so much information and so quickly that slowing down element, because you can walk on a path and miss everything. And part of it is our very goal-oriented, kind of step-oriented of like, how many steps can I get in versus where am I and where am I stepping?
The focus is almost always on something other than where you are. And you say something that's so, so important. The joy in mindfulness is the recognition. It's the aha, from, wow, I've never heard that before. I've never smelt that before. I've never tasted that on my tongue before. I've never done all these things at the same time from this particular thing. And I brought up tinnitus as something that's so simple that everybody above the age of 12 or 13 experiences. And if you listen to it, it's not always the same. And sometimes it oscillates. Sometimes it gets louder and softer and louder and softer. Sometimes it kind of has this going up and down in pitch. And the whole point of all of this is to be able to know yourself. The self that we talk about isn't the self that is, the ego self. The self is, what is your essential you? What's the you that all of your life people have been trying to make you into something that's not that? What is the you that starts to understand and starts to appreciate and starts to recognize things out in the universe that resonate back to you? That pitch, where there's resonance between where you are in life, what's important to you, and where you feel this kind of equilibrium, like everything is just going to be all right. And when you can do that, when everything is damn sure not going to be all right, emotionally and intellectually, you can present that to yourself like a case and say, let's look a little bit further here. Let's look to see what about this situation is familiar to me, and where's the unfamiliarity coming from? Can I stand on what's familiar? Can I be comfortable in that? And can I embrace what's unfamiliar and allow that to come in just as it is, unchanged? No naming of it, just what is it? And how does it feel to me? What does it seem like? It's hard to translate it into words unless you get a chance to talk to people like we're doing right now. But having a calm essence allows you to go to sleep much faster at night. It allows you to calm your thoughts and ask them to go sit in the corner for a minute while you calm your breathing and you bring your pulse down from 90 beats per minute to 70 beats per minute to 58 beats per minute. And then you drift off into sleep. There are all of these things that knowing and isn't a place to go to and be. It's a way to interact with what's going on right now, really.
It's a way of being.
Yeah. A navigation tool or a boat to ride in while you're navigating.
It's a way of being. It's not a way of doing.
Exactly.
And instead of to-do lists, maybe we should have to-be lists.
It's interesting. I know you do quite a little bit of networking, probably a little bit less face-to-face than you used to, but it occurred to me, and if I shared this with you before, I kind of don't worry about it, but my point is, it came to me like an idea. Rather than asking people what they do, who cares what you do? Why are you here? What's your reason for being on this earth? What's your mission? What's the thing that you're here to do that no one else can do? Would that next half hour with a half dozen people be an hour worth engaging in? How often do people get an opportunity to look at a question like that and engage it? Like, wow, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say they're going to probably be, I don't know. Well, because like I said, it's, it makes people pause and slow down. Because in our everyday lives, when we're so wrapped up in the external world, and the external world being all the noise and the just things that we have, like that have to get done. A lot of times there's not that much. People don't allow the space for those types of questions. Or those kind of reflections of like, okay, I'm going to this meeting. Why am I going? What's my purpose here? Does it serve my purpose? Am I truly interested in what everybody else is like, why everybody else is here? It's another question.
It's a limitless set of possibilities. This being curious and inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. And I will share publicly that day after tomorrow, I'm going in for an operation. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. For me, it's a demarcation of working up to this for 3 months. Two of the months I knew what it was, and it took all of that in order to get this scheduled out and actually in place. But when I come home, whatever shape I'm in, I'm ready to go back to my regularly scheduled life. Probably more knowledgeable and more empowered. And I have to tell you, I've learned language and names for things and what they cost that I've never heard of before in my life. But I bring it up to you right now because I'm kind of letting you in on a secret, and that my talk isn't just talk. This is how I stay present every single day and more or less invite anxiety so that I can just become it. Invite fear so I can become it. Invite distastefulness so I can become it. All of those things, when internalized, they're now something that's familiar to me, and they're my friends. They have no power over me. Those thoughts they're not the source of power in my life. My empowerment comes from knowing that I've been enough every day of my life up to here. I've got a good feeling about this. So having said that, having the love of all my friends and my family and my dear wife, and especially you, Jan, it makes my days something that I wouldn't trade. We have a joke at my house. It was brought up to me by a dear friend who, in his 90s, he said of his wife of 70 some years that he wouldn't trade her for a spotted dog. It was just something he started saying when they were in their 20s, and he said it the entire time that they were married. I would not. Yep, that Edna, she's a good girl, and I wouldn't trade her for a spotted dog. So with that thought in mind, any thoughts to send me and our listeners on our way?
Not really, Bill. I mean, first of all, I wish, and I'm sure I'm going to speak for everybody out there. We wish an easeful time over the next few weeks. Yeah. And obviously, and the best possible outcome and scenario. And yeah. And yeah, I love what you shared, and let's just take a moment and see if we can all practice just that, being present.
Well, thank you again, Jan. You are such a good buddy. I love our time together, and I love your gentle way, and I love your thoughtfulness. And I just want to thank you for being here one more time.
You are so welcome, Bill. My pleasure, and it's always good to be with you too.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that thought, we are lighting the candle, a world that works. And as I like to say, both call somebody and tell them that your life works because they're in it. Go out and live your best life, and then come back and tell us all about it. God bless all of you. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.